Hello, everyone, and welcome to MUCON 2023. This is the first panel of the conference. My name is Priya Dewan from Gig Life Pro. I will be the moderator of this panel and a few other workshops and panels over the next few days, so you'll be seeing a lot of me. Today, we have invited 3 industry experts to explain to us the power of data, where to find it, how to understand it, and how to use it to build opportunities and achieve your goals. Data is an incredibly powerful tool when understood and utilized properly. So to get us started on that journey, we are joined by Sung Cho, founder of Chartmetric, who is based in Seoul, but also in Los Angeles, I believe. You spend half your time in Seoul and half your time in Los Angeles. Soy Kim, who does product marketing at Spotify in New York, and Leon, Director of Insights for BPI, which manages the official charts of the UK, and who is based in London. Sung, let's start with you.
All right.
For those who might not be as familiar with Chartmetric, can you please share with us what your platform is about, how it works, as well as the motivation you had to set it up?
Yeah, sure. Hello, everyone. Glad to be here today with you. My company, I'm founder and CEO at Chartmetric. Chartmetric is data analytics platform for the music industry. So we are tracking the data, artist data around the world, as many as 9 million artists. So some people wonder, like, are there those many artists in this world? Indeed, those are the number of artists who claim themselves as artists, who have taken time to register their names on one of these streaming platforms. So we track the data across all different platforms, and we put them together for record labels and music management, artist management companies to understand and take actions on the data more easily.
Wonderful. And how did you come up with this idea of setting it all up?
So originally, I was in the gaming industry. There are several tools like this already in the gaming industry, such as App Annie or Sensor Tower. So when you build a new mobile game, it's a no-brainer. You have to have this tool ready. And this goes even further back in the finance industry. Bloomberg. No, you cannot imagine running a finance business without the Bloomberg subscription or terminal. So investors, they have to use Bloomberg. So similarly, in the music industry, I thought, I wondered, okay, is there something like Bloomberg in this industry? Of course, there were some predecessors, but I thought maybe we could take another perspective into this and build a new tool for the streaming age. That's how we got started about 8 years ago.
How fascinating. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Soy, you and I worked together when you were doing marketing at Columbia on the BTS campaigns. And now you are on the other side working at Spotify, a store. So how has your relationship with data changed from a label perspective to now a store perspective?
For sure. I would say data is critical to everything we do, both at a label and at a store or DSP, digital streaming platform. The difference would be when I was a label marketer, I was looking at data every single day for my roster specifically, right? So my 23 artists, trying to understand how is that fan base growing, what are the songs that are being consumed, what does that fan base look like, and also just day to day, because I would be launching a lot of digital and social activations, and with that, you can see in real time how your fans are conversing. The difference now at Spotify is that I'm thinking about data for millions of artists at a time, right? And instead of thinking about growing my one artist that I might be in charge of a release that week, I'm thinking about how do we build products that can serve all of these artists. We need to make sure that artists of all sizes, all backgrounds, all genres, all countries are able to use our tools effectively and grow their audiences. So it's a really cool, it's almost like a 20,000-foot view, if you will. Instead of thinking about my artists one at a time, I feel that we are able to really build for the future of music, which is really cool.
Wonderful. So basically, from a label standpoint, fewer artists, but many
More in the
more
weeds.
different touch points, right?
Yes.
Many more different sources of data. And now from the Spotify side, one source of data, but a jillion more, so many more artists. Is that,
Right, making
is that
sure
about
that it's one size fits all.
amazing?
Yes.
Thank you. Leon, BPI manages the official charts. For those who don't know, it's similar to Billboard charting. It's the UK's national music chart. As well as awards like the Brit Awards and Mercury Prize. So between charting and awards, both of them, I imagine, require a lot of data. What are the different points of data that you look at depending on what purpose you're looking at it for?
Sure, no problem. So just let everyone in the room know that the official charts company has been running and co-owned by the BPI and another trade body called ERA, which is the Entertainment Retailers Association. And it's one of the most in-depth, market-level domestic chart systems in the world, I'd say. So in there we collect data on physical product, digital downloads, and also streaming. Within the system, you can investigate data going back to 1994, and we've got over 15 years worth of streaming data in there as well. It's a really powerful tool. So Sung will know all about it, but it hasn't got the breadth that Chartmetric does, but we have the depth of the UK market. So if you have both of our platforms together, you know absolutely everything about the UK market and the global. So, and yeah, it's a really important part of the aspect of the industry now. When I first started out 15 years ago, data was important, but it wasn't that important. And now it's very much informing a lot of decisions globally. So really important now for the industry to have that data at their fingertips.
And in terms of like charting versus awards, like how much, charting is clearly data-driven, right? It's all data. Does awards also factor in data, and if so, how so?
So the two award shows that the BPI run, the first is the Brits, which is our big showcase one. It's broadcast in February on UK television, and I think it's also broadcast around the world with partners such as YouTube. That has to have an element of success, so you have to be in the top 40 to qualify for an award nominee, but that's the only requirement. You just have to hit the top 40 at least once through the course of the release schedule. The other award show that we have, the Mercury Album Prize, there is no success threshold required. You can nominate your artist into that mix if you're a British artist, but you could sell 1,000 records and still qualify, or you could have 5 million. It doesn't really matter. So it's really the Brits that has that threshold of chart success that's part of the requirement.
Wonderful. And are both of those awards open to non-British artists as well?
We have an international category for the Brit Awards, and BTS have won a global success award in the past. And for the Mercuries, you do have to be a British artist or be British-based. So you could be a British-based Korean artist.
Oh, British-based. Very interesting,
I think so.
actually.
I might have to fact check.
Good to know, good to know. So, Sang, Soy had mentioned also from a label's perspective, this question is for you, Sang.
All right.
How many different data points she had to look at as a marketeer, whether it was from Meta or Spotify or YouTube. Chartmetric very conveniently pulls all of those data points together. So how many different platforms do you guys actually deal with and pull data from?
I forgot the exact count. We kept adding more, but I think
good.
15 different platforms at least, and I would say almost 50 different metrics at the artist level. So there are other metrics at the track level or album level as well, but these different metrics include follower count, engagement rate, comments, likes, TikTok post count, videos, likes count, like all, or Shazam count per artist. So anything you can think of, Instagram followers, Facebook followers, Wikipedia page views is one of my favorite metrics actually. Yeah, Wikipedia page views, you cannot manipulate that number.
How
It's a true
interesting, yes.
interest from the people around the world.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I mean, I imagine it was quite a task because, I mean, yes, data is all around us and everywhere, but it's also quite proprietary in the sense that people are very protective of their data. So can you share a little bit about some of the struggles, I guess, in your early days of
Yeah.
trying to pull all of this data from all of these different stores? And
Totally. So we don't go deep. Like we don't touch those proprietary data. We only deal with publicly available data, which is exactly the same business model that Bloomberg had, or any other of these third-party. We call ourselves as a third-party data data company. We are not dealing with the first-party data, which means like the exact revenue or stream count broken down by countries or genders. Those things we don't do that. So that was the line that we kept from the beginning. Okay, like Bloomberg or App Annie, we will bring the publicly available data into the system, which may not seem that useful at first. So that was a struggle, personally myself. Who would pay for this data? You can just go to Spotify or Apple Music, Instagram, and you can check those numbers yourself. Okay, this artist has 5.89 million followers. This artist has 470,000 monthly listeners. Why would anyone pay for a free data? Guess what? There are some interns in a dark room at any point who is suffering. Going through this data manually writing down in a spreadsheet. When TikTok first came out, one of the very popular jobs in the music industry was TikTok scroller.
oh my gosh.
So your
I can
job,
imagine.
all day long, I'm sure there's somebody still doing that somewhere. All you do all day long is just go through TikTok videos and write down those like counts and numbers and just manually record so that you can find the next viral song and next viral artists. All of these manual work was happening. So that was why that was something we wanted to solve at least. So that was kind of a struggle, but over time, luckily, we established more partnerships with some of those data owners. So it became easier over time. Yes.
Yes, because manual takes time and virality happens very quickly, right? So
Yes.
by the time they're done counting, they have to start again because ideally those numbers will have changed. So how
Yeah.
do you do it without relying on manual?
So, great question. So anyone in this room, if you want to try, you can go and try this. So of course, it's the age of computer science and programming. So we have like workers, 100, 200 different Python language, Python scripts. They work 24/7 in Amazon AWS system for us. So from the beginning, these little scripts, they're so cute. They are hardworking. They never need to eat anything. They work all day long for us, so that any interns, they don't have to suffer. So this is a real story. One of my advisors, the very beginning of Chartmetric was to hear this story from one of these industry executives, he felt so sorry for his intern because her job was to go through the iTunes. You remember those days, iTunes charts? To find out the position in iTunes store, you have to manually change your country one by one. You have to do this 126 times to change the country, go to the genre chart, and there's no search function. You have to use your eyes to find your artist's album in iTunes chart, so that at the end, oh, our artists, charted in 26 different countries and number like a top 10. That's someone's job, everyday job,
I
2 hours
remember
a day.
Remember those days.
Yeah, you remember.
I do remember
Yeah,
those
you do.
days, yes.
So, yeah, exactly. So now, thanks to these script computer languages, which is no-brainer. Like that's what's happening in the gaming industry or finance industry already. So we have automated the whole thing. So nowadays we are ingesting, guess what? Couple billion actually. Imagine on charts only, we are ingesting 30,000, 40,000 different charts a day. So for 9 million artists and 70, 80 million different tracks, easily you can imagine that we have to ingest more than 1 billion data points per day automatically into the system, which is making Amazon rich here every day. Actually, we pay a lot to Amazon to do this.
Wonderful, and thank
Yeah.
goodness for technology. Thanks,
Oh, yes.
Sung. Spotify has always been at the forefront of giving creators direct access both to how their content is set up and appears on the platform, as well as quite a lot of data tools that they can access themselves. So
Yes.
can you explain to us a little bit more about what some of these tools are?
Of course. I think many people are familiar with the consumer-facing side of Spotify, which is the app you probably put in your pocket and you can listen to everything around the world. There is another entire side of Spotify called Spotify for Artists, and it is a free tool and actually an entire suite of tools that we make available to all artists and their teams around the world. One of my favorite things that we just launched at Spotify for Artists is called segments. So what that means is within your audience data, you can understand the way that your audience segments are broken down. This is a very recent launch, so you might be hearing this for the first time. Not to fear, you can look it up afterwards, but I'll try to break it down for you today. The really great thing about the Segments tab is you can understand who comprises your active audience. Now, your active audience is really important to understand because not all listeners are the same, but your active audience are the people that we know from data are probably going to listen to your music again. And when you look into your Segments tab on your Spotify for Artists today, we actually break this down for you further. So you can see your active audience broken down between your super listeners, your moderate listeners, and your light listeners.
Can I just, pause you right there?
Yes.
What is the difference between a super listener, a moderate listener, and what was the third one?
A light listener.
Light listener, yes.
Yep, I actually brought the definitions with me just to make sure I don't mess up. Your super listeners are your most dedicated active listeners who listen to you in the past 28 days. So these are likely your super fans. Your moderate listeners are active listeners who intentionally streamed your music. So that means they went to look for your music and wanted to listen to it several times in the past 28 days. And your light listeners are folks who intentionally streamed your music once or maybe just a few times. So we're really looking at the amount of times that they are dedicating their time to listen to your music.
How interesting.
Yeah, and so that's one way to understand, the breakdown between your active audience as well as your programmed audience. Your programmed audience on Spotify are the people who are listening from different types of playlists, whether they are editorial or user-made. The other thing about Spotify for Artists, the second bucket I wanted to talk about is how we also let you see what countries and cities around the world your music is streamed in the most. And we've heard really cool stories from artists and their teams, how they are looking at that data to actually determine tour stops. So they might think, oh, when I go on tour, I'll hit up, city A, B, and C. They look at their S4A data, Spotify for Artists data, and they learn, oh, wait, this country that's really close by is one of our top cities. We should add that on. And that's great because this information is showing that there are real humans, real fans in that city who really want to listen to you. And then finally, the third bucket of information that you can see on your Spotify for Artists is how you're creating fans. And so this means that you can understand exactly how your music is being consumed, and some of the metrics that we share in this category are things like streams per listener. So again, how many times did a listener listen to that song, right? And so as a marketer, I would use that information to understand, oh, this song might be really sticky with my fans, right? You can also see saves and playlist ads, meaning how many times did a user listen to that song, enjoy it so much that they added it to their own personal playlist. That's also great because that's another sign of conversion, right? From a light listener to maybe a fan. And we also gave you an information around source of streams. So again, this breakdown between what types of playlists you may have been streamed from, whether it was streamed from the artist page directly, maybe it was through a radio page. It's really helpful because then that helps you understand how fans are finding you on Spotify.
That's great. And do you guys also provide more demographic information about your listeners?
Yes, we do. Yes, so for Spotify for Artists, you can pull up your artist page and you'll see the entire breakdown of who comprises each artist audience. You can see by gender and by age, and that data is only available if that listener has decided to make it available to you.
Okay, great. That's good to know that it's a choice thing because again,
Yes.
as powerful as data is, there is a lot of questions that people are having about, too much data. And how much data do we feel comfortable with sharing to even the artists that we like and their labels? And interesting that you mentioned, so a lot of the information, if I'm correct, on Spotify for Artists is not necessarily the information that you would be able to provide or see on Chartmetric, for example, right? So this is not like an either-or situation. It is more a couple of tools you use side by side. Is that accurate? Okay.
I think of Spotify for Artists tools as the best way to build your audience and engage with them on Spotify.
Great, thank you for that. Leon, we've talked a lot about this, and you mentioned streaming, and I mean, technology in general has really, helped us access our data, but it's also made things a little bit challenging in terms of an industry as a whole on how we look at individual artist data. So how have you seen technology impact over the years how the charts are calculated, for example?
Well, I mean, every format change often requires some additional focus in the chart rules. So in recent years, we've accommodated digital formats, we've incorporated streaming, and at every stage there's always another fork in the road with how you treat the data. So the current thing now with streaming is that some tracks used to hang around in the chart for a very long time because of the way the algorithmic playlists work. And so in order to keep things fresh and to keep it relevant to our audiences, one of our bigger audiences is the Radio 1 listener base in the UK. So Radio 1 is a public service broadcaster. They specialise with youth audiences. And on Friday evenings, they take us through the top 40 chart. And it's the first time it gets announced anywhere. So it's a unique exclusive that they have. And so in order to keep that relevant, we need to make sure the charts are not flooded with stuff that's just been around for a long time. So after a period of time, there's some calculations that are applied to, it's called accelerated decline, and if anyone needs to find out more about it, please email me afterwards. But it's a way of treating the music so that the fresh chart single releases appear higher up in the charts, and if you're there for a long time, once you show any signs of decline, once you've reached your peak, then this calculation takes out the streams from the numbers. So sounds a bit complicated. It is a little bit complicated, but it's just needed to keep things fresh. And then another change, a number of years ago, 2017, the Ed Sheeran Divide album had all 16 tracks appearing in the top 40. And
wow.
to then restrict that, we only feature the top 3 tracks of any one album now. So we'll still count all the streams from all of them, but when you see the published chart, there'll be an asterisk next to Harry Styles, for tracks 4 onwards, because you can't have 15 tracks in the top 40 anymore, otherwise it just devalues the chart. So that's another newish rule that we've had applied.
That's so interesting. I mean, there are so many fundamental and fine adjustments. And also, I mean, working with BTS, who charted in so many different countries, and at least had the potential to, I learned personally about all these different rules that different country charts have between each other, for example. So what are some rules that apply to the UK charts, especially maybe around like physical packaging, which is so popular in Korea, that may be somewhat different or not known to people, but are really, really important to understand if their goal is to chart in the UK?
So part of my role is to sit in on the chart select committee, and we review these things very often. We issued a new chart rules last month, so there's 13 pages for the albums chart, there's 11 pages for the singles chart. The one big thing that I think I should flag with anyone in the room here, if you're planning to release product in the UK, physical product, they all have to have the same artwork. You cannot have collector item editions for each band member from a K-pop band, and I know that happens here. So your fan base will have to bear in mind that there's that rule. And so when you're working with a UK label or you're distributing yourself via a label distribution platform, you have to be bearing in mind that you have one album cover for the UK version. You can have different formats, you can have vinyl, cassette, CD, but it has to be consistent. You can't have any bespoke artwork to customize it. You can change the color of the vinyl, you can change the color of the cassettes, and they count, but the artwork has to be on the same.
Wow, I did not realize that you could actually change the color of the product.
Yeah, you can.
And how about merchandise, other merchandise? Like, is there any other merchandise that falls under it? Because this was a point of contention as well in the US charts, right?
Yeah, so...
With a QR code or something like that.
Yeah, there used to be, I mean, you could have signed cards in the album artwork. That's still allowed. So you can have signed copies. You can even have NFT content now. There was a new album, it was a new rule change last year. There was a UK rock band called the Amazons who launched the first album that featured NFT content contributing towards the chart. We have digital media devices, which is the old-fashioned USB sticks. So we can use them as well. But I don't know who uses USB sticks anymore. It's all Bluetooth, isn't it? So
don't know where I would put that in, actually, right?
Yeah. But yeah, there's a lot of variety, and we're always trying to keep on track of the format changes. If there's a customer that wants to buy it, the chances are the record label want it to chart, be a chart legible. And if there's a good reason for it to happen and everyone agrees, then we do it. And if there's a bad reason for it not to happen, then it doesn't qualify.
That's great. And it's also great to know that you guys are regularly looking at this and updating your rules and policy alongside the technology changes. Sung, who are your customers?
So, in the beginning, artist managers, they came first, and then small independent record labels, because large labels had this kind of tool already in-house. Yeah, those big three labels, you know, they already have built or invested millions of dollars to build a tool like this. So they didn't see any reason to use a third-party tool like ours. But let's like those smaller labels who couldn't afford to have those engineers in the house, or artist managers who deeply care about their artists' long-term career and success. These artist managers, they are married to the artists, so they are tracking every single number possible or available to them. They have been doing this for a long time already. And how have they been doing this? Such a manual work. And also by checking 7 different platforms, like visiting YouTube today and Facebook, Insights, and Spotify, Apple Music, all different platforms one by one. They have to check one by one. So we made that part easier. So they became our customers first. And a few distributors also joined us to become our customers. One of the one that I remember, one of the earliest customers we had was called In Grooves Music Group, based in LA. Thanks to our chief commercial officer, actually sitting here, Chaz Jenkins, who is also a speaker here, they came to join to become a customer. I wondered why. A distributor, why do you want to be our customer? Guess what? It's all because of Spotify playlists. They want to outperform, and they want to be more helpful for their artists than their competitors. So Spotify playlist back then, and still nowadays, such a critical tool and platform for them to promote their artists and music. So this specific distributor had a dedicated team to help artists and songs to be playlisted better, more. How do you do that? Before you can even go out and spend money on curators, on playlists and promotions, you have to know when your music gets into one of those playlists, either user-generated playlists or Spotify's editorial playlists. You have to know that first. Of course, you can get some info from Spotify's own Spotify for Artists tool, but we happen to have a wider net in the beginning to track all these different playlists. So they appreciated that part. And
probably the
yeah.
user-generated ones as
User-generated
well, right?
one, especially.
Spotify, maybe
Spotify
didn't
lets you
initially
know
track.
if you get into one of those editorial playlists. But we were tracking those user-generated playlists, which also played a critical role in this ecosystem. So they became one of our first customers, and of course, we gave them a good deal, big discount. Thank you so much. What happened a couple years later was Universal Music Group really appreciate. I'm not giving credits to ourselves, but it's such a huge joy when something like this happens to your customer. Your customer became a pioneer of your product. And I deeply appreciated how much also they committed to us up front. But a couple of years later, I saw this news. Universal Music Group acquired In Grooves Music Group. And then Universal Music Group's CEO said, In Grooves, they have this data first, data-centric approach. And that's why we value In Grooves Music Group. Really pioneered like the data-driven marketing. Loved those words. And they had that data focus in mind from the beginning, but I felt like we played a small role helping those. I remember like whenever I visited the office, they actually gathered all 40 employees together in the same room to see me show the latest features in Chartmetric, and they asked such engaged questions, like such an expert users, and I loved meeting them anytime. And then later, like other companies really valued. So that's also one of the examples. Yeah.
That's great. I mean, I would say also those labels have access to their artist data, but not necessarily other artists' data, right?
Correct.
So one of my favorite things about Chartmetric is the ability to access everybody's data and actually compare my artists, when I had artists,
Yeah.
to other artists that were similar, right? So
Even but
please share more about this. How does your platform allow people to compare their data with other artists' data?
Thank you. Great, great question. Thank you for the question. So even your own artist, by the way, I didn't know this. I was in Tokyo yesterday for meetings with record labels there. It's including some local labels. Even if they signed their artists, some artists do not want to disclose social media handles or any data. They don't want to give this kind of power or data to their labels.
Oh,
And
how
it happens,
interesting. Yes,
they
yeah,
give
of
this
course.
data to artist managers, of course, they're married. But record labels, like they may screw me at one day. I don't want to give any power to them. So this data is mine. I'm not giving my TikTok data to that record label. If they screw me, if they do not treat me fairly, I'm gonna just switch to another label. They may think, and that happened to Taylor or there are
Absolutely.
those
Well, whatever
stories.
it is, right? They're
Yeah.
usually only signed for a limited amount of releases at any given point. So you're actually very good point.
So record labels have this suffering, like to be able to like help these artists, they have to have the access to their artist data, but their artists do not disclose or do not give the power. This is such a pain. So even this happened. It was a funny story to me. But anyway, Chartmetric platform from the very beginning. Again, as I said about Bloomberg, you can check any artist's data around the world, as many of 9 million of them. This includes Barack Obama or like some artists that you never thought were artists. They sang once and they have one song on Spotify and they become an artist. So even those ones we are tracking. So you can, anytime you come to Chartmetric, there's just one page with one scroll, you can get a pretty good idea of what has happened to this artist or what is happening to this artist, such that, let's say that an A&R in the record label, I don't think we really help A&R to discover new artists out of blue. They hear, when the artists are there, they hear about these like artists making music from their bedrooms. But they can, once they come to Chartmetric, they can see what was happening to this artist in the last 3 months or 6 months. Was that growth just abrupt and unnatural, or is this artist it really is developing truly engaged fans over time? That's something they can find out, and they can use that information in making that such a critical decision of whether to sign or not. I'm not saying that they rely only on our data. They of course look at 10 other data sources, but we play that role in there.
Great, very interesting, thank you. The other thing is, we've been speaking about data predominantly in terms of numbers so far, right? Like number of users, number of streams, number of engagements, posts, clicks. But data is a lot more than just numbers. There is a whole world of what we call metadata, right? And a lot of artists, and especially emerging labels and managers, do not pay as much attention to this as I feel like they should. Because without having correct metadata that is placed into stores like Spotify, then it's very hard for charts like the official charts to actually track that data properly, right? So Soy, what are some tools that Spotify has to make sure that their data is properly represented on the platform and properly promoted? Because again, Spotify, I think, is a platform that really, really empowers creators and their teams to directly have access to their content. So,
Yeah, I would say Spotify is definitely of the mission to ensure that we are democratizing access for creators of all sizes, all backgrounds, all genres, and all countries of origins to be able to grow their audiences and their fans and thus earn a living as an artist. And I think that is one of my favorite things about Spotify today. I was talking earlier about all the different sources of data that we provide so that you can understand the breakdown of your audience, how people are listening, but there's also an entire suite of tools that we're building to ensure that you can build your fan base on Spotify. And so I wanted to kind of break those down today.
Yes, please. And I know you're very excited, but we do have translators in the back, so we do need you to slow it down just a notch.
I'm sorry, that's the
No.
New Yorker in me. We talk so quickly.
Not at all.
Slow it down. So the first bucket of products on Spotify for artists are what we call profile tools. And so if you think about your profile on Spotify, that is the first, the first visual that you are providing to someone, a potential listener, a fan, someone who is looking you up on Spotify. And so within your profile page, you can obviously edit and update your bio, your photo, but also we've made sure that you can bring in your merch offerings through our store integration with Shopify. You can also bring in your tour dates to ensure that people who are listening to you around the world know when you're visiting. So my favorite thing is my Spotify knows I'm based in New York, and so it will always tell me if an artist that I'm following is going to be performing in New York that weekend, and it makes my plans really easy, but also make sure that I don't miss that artist when they're in town. We also have products like Artist Pick and Artist Playlist, which are more ways for artists to, again, use that profile to interact with their fans, to show their personality, to tell their fans what they're thinking about, and to show them what may be inspiring them today or what song that they currently are listening to that they want their fans to know about. So those are all things you can do on profile. The second bucket now are things that we call expression tools. So one of those is Canvas, which is an 8-second video loop that is attached to a song. And when you are listening to that song, you see it kind of playing in the background. And one of my favorite things about this product is that you can also share it, if you are a fan, to other social platforms. So maybe you were looking at the Canvas, you remembered how much you love the song, you can share it to Instagram, share it to TikTok, make sure that your friends know that you're listening to that too, and invite them to be a fan with you. And we actually have found that adding a high quality canvas has increased streams by up to 120% and saves by up to 114% in addition to lifts in that artist profile search. So it's a really powerful free tool that we're allowing artists to use to make their expression known on platform. We also recently launched something called clips, which are under 30-second videos that artists can upload directly to Spotify for artists. And I've seen really creative examples of artists going on tour and using clips to show behind-the-scenes clips of them on stage, of them kind of breaking down why a new release matters to them. So again, another free and amazing way for you as an artist to tell your story and contextualize the music that you're releasing so that your fans understand why that song mattered so much to you.
That's great. I mean, it's nice to know that there is so much available directly to users because many independent artists and labels obviously use third-party companies to get their music onto Spotify. And a lot of those companies don't necessarily have the resources, right, to have people directly talking to the Spotify reps in each market and pitching this. And
Yes.
my understanding is, like most technology platforms or digital platforms, the more you engage with the platform and complete sort of your profile, like whether this is on literally any platform, right? The more the platform will support you back. Is that accurate to say? Is that like, besides it being just a nice thing to have, in a way it's almost like a necessary thing. Like it's hard for you to promote an artist that doesn't have a complete or up-to-date profile, right?
Right, and you actually just mentioned the word promote, and that's the third bucket of tools that we've made available
Perfect.
on Spotify for artists, and they're called promotion tools. And so to your point, we want to make sure that artists have that full cycle end to end to be able to use Spotify to grow their audience. And so within that category, we have products like Marquee, which is a full takeover of the screen. It is an ad product that you can buy and help people know when you have your latest release out in the world. And we let people decide between the first day to 21 days within their release coming out to decide when they'd like to use that. And it's a really great way to make sure that fans who may not have heard of your song right on release day don't miss it. And our latest product that we are slowly rolling out to the rest of the world is called Discovery Mode. And that is another way for you to help signal to Spotify which songs may matter most to you. This will take me a lot of time to explain, so if you'd like to learn more, please make sure that you check out the Spotify for Artists website, where we have breakdowns of every single product that I've mentioned today, and you can really learn about everything. We have case studies up there, we have videos of folks who have used these. We just released a video series called How They Made It with an independent Vietnamese-American artist named Thuy, featuring her team from Venice Music that actually breaks down how they used every single product I just mentioned today. Because again, at Spotify for Artists, we really believe in democratizing access, and we want to make sure that everyone, regardless of where you are able to learn and use these best practices as well. We don't believe in gatekeeping.
What a wonderful idea as well to have an artist, Thuy, who I love, by the way,
I love her.
do it herself and her team to not just be like Spotify telling you how to use Spotify, but a real life case. That's great. Thank you. So, digital, everybody uses, well, not everybody. A lot of people use digital advertising, and it is much more common, and it's kind of a required thing. Now, most people use digital advertising to promote their content across all of these different platforms. And I feel like what that can do sometimes is kind of muddy up the data, right? So it's not as easy to gauge which of your data is actually engaged versus not. So Leon, how do you recommend people approach data, especially when they are actually doing a lot of proactive and sometimes paid measures to boost their following and boost their engagement?
So there's a number of ways. I mean, my first initial recommendation, which I've always mentioned to any artist, is when you see a comment coming through on one of the platforms that allows you to do that, that is gold. Sometimes it can be so heartwarming, sometimes it can be a bit negative, sometimes it can be a bit neutral. But when you have someone engaging with a like or a share or a follow or those metrics that chart metric collects, they're brilliant to start with. The other source of engagement is the source of play, which I know Spotify have. So if you are on a playlist and you're, it's almost called a passive listen, yeah. But if you're saving it to your own collection and you're a premium subscriber, you're worth a lot more revenue to your repertoire than if you're listening on a free tier and on just a general playlist. So the engagement is, the lean forward listening, they call it, is really important. And just going back to metadata, I just want to chip in on that.
Yes, please.
Really important when you are registering your details with collection agencies is to have consistency on title of song, artist name. If you get those things wrong, you might miss out on being paid. So please be correct with everything with your data.
I'm glad you brought that up, actually, because it is so appropriate in this context and in this market where everything has to be delivered with translations, right? And a lot of platforms do not allow for side-by-side translations like Korean and then English, for example, to be displayed together. So what are some of the best practices that you can share around when you are releasing music in one language, but you're trying to achieve goals and success in a market where your music is listed in another language?
Okay, so I was benefiting from this myself today. I love looking at the lyrics on songs coming through. Now, I don't speak Korean at all. I I'm just learning for this trip, really. But I love seeing the lyrics for English and Korean next to each other in real time. And on some of the other platforms, you can fade down the songs so you can actually sing along to it like a karaoke feature. So I think lyrics is really important. Also, in the world of voice-activated speakers, Amazon Connect, Siri, all of these things, you need to be able to deliver the metadata so that someone could say a lyric from your song or the band name or the title of the song. So really think about the future of voice-activated as well when you're providing this data.
Very interesting. So do you have anything else to add from a label perspective, thinking back from your Columbia days of like, because again, rules change on platforms also, so it's really important to check with your distributor or label and make sure that they have the right information, but do you have any other advice around that?
Yeah, I actually just thought of this because of what you were sharing, but when I was at Columbia Records, there was an artist named Pao Fu, and it was a song that was absolutely viral, but it was called Deathbed, and no one could find it. It was all over social media, but the lyrics were coffee for my head, coffee for my bed, and everyone was searching on Google, on all these other platforms like Spotify, coffee for my head song. And they couldn't find the song. And so we actually ended up redelivering the song as a new name, Deathbed, parentheses, coffee for my head.
Oh my gosh,
you can
how
actually find
clever.
it like that on Spotify today. But we did that because we wanted to make sure that fans who wanted to find the song could find it.
That's so great. And I guess then Sung, on Chartmetric, they would
Yes.
be able to tell, right? Whether or not their content is, say, merging, right, on the back end, by whether or not they have multiple listings on Chartmetric. Do you guys support multiple languages as well?
Yeah, we deal with that problem ourselves as well. At least thanks to ISRCs, that unique, like letters attached to the song, we can still identify its track uniquely. But that's not always the case. And there are different releases and different versions and radio edits. And sometimes they share the same ISRC. And even for the same song, they
The same
use
ISRC on two different versions.
that shouldn't happen. But the other way as well, same song, exactly the same recording, same music, same master recording, but different ISRCs for different platforms. That's
Another
actually
major
quite
no.
common. So for us, our users, they suffer, like when they have to look at two different pages. So we try to, thanks to the data science, and nowadays you can give this task to ChatGPT. They're so good at this. Hey, this song and that song, are they the same song? They're called a little differently. They know they're the same songs. So we actually give some tasks to ChatGPT these days.
How interesting.
And they can identify some of these issues for us. So we are using everything we have in our resources to make it a little easier for our users.
And for the benefit of the doubt, we like to assume that this is not done intentionally, but very often people do change labels, they change distributors, they have to take down their content through one partner and re-upload it, and very often it's in this process that the new partner will deliver it with a different ISRC, right? So I guess, Leon, this is a good one for you. What can be done about this after the fact, once you discover that the same track of yours is available on Spotify, for example, as two different ISRCs?
Okay, so I'm going to park the ISRC's issue. In the UK, we have, in the chart system, a master product. So if something moves ownership, the new owner can say, my master product is now this company record group organization instead of the previous one. So it can be fixed. It's an email or a phone call away. But yeah, if you're spotting something that isn't right and it's not metadata generated, if it's not from the source, it can be fixed in our system. It can be changed.
Great. And then from a store perspective, Soy, what happens if you see that you have multiple versions of the same track on Spotify? Is there anything that they can do about that?
I don't think I'm the best person from
Okay, yeah,
Spotify
sorry.
to answer that.
You're more product. You're more
Yes.
product for sure.
But I do
guess
know
go
that
to your
we
distributor.
would help you figure out a solution.
Yes, I'm sure you can. Sure you can. Well, we only have a few minutes left, so I did want to spend a little bit of time to open the panel up for some audience questions. So, do we have some members of COCA with some microphones? And if anybody here has a question, now is a great time to raise your hand. If you don't, I have a ton. But I'll try to make them appropriate to who's speaking from each company here. Oh yeah? Okay, yes. I can feel it. I know that this is a data panel, everyone. I'm sure there has to be a couple of questions here.
First, thank you for your speeches. My question was about fake data. Do you have, how can you count data as true data and fake data? I'm thinking about especially manipulating charts, like artists, even fans manipulating charts. So what do you guys think about this? Do you have a dedicated team for this? Or?
Yeah, so in the UK, the BPI does a lot of things. We have an anti-piracy division, and we are constantly looking for illegal streaming activity. So if there are stream farms playing the same track over and over, we will spot that and we'll notify the streaming companies about that. So there's as much accuracy as we can to prevent that. Another thing where you or I could play our favorite track for 100 times in a day or more, if someone does that, the Spotify numbers we get are capped at 99, I think it is. So we get a cap on the limit of how many one person can generate. So if you play it all day long, thousands of times, it's not going to count.
I have something to add to that. That's the question that I received from day one when I started this company. And that was one of those requirements or asks from our users. Hey, I don't like this chart manipulation that's happening everywhere. Can you guys maybe detect so that I can find the right partners on your platform instead of those, fakers? So I thought about maybe we can use data science to help solve this issue. But instead, what we ended up doing was just track all kinds of metrics all together at the same time. So let's say that you go and stream farm or Instagram farm, you paid $10,000 to this firm to gain Instagram fans. Your Instagram fan number suddenly, increases by 200%. But guess what? YouTube or Wikipedia or Spotify, everywhere else, silence. Nothing's happening. And as a user, and also we added this feature where you can synchronize your mouse across 40 different charts. So when you move your mouse over left and right, you see that there's a sudden uptick on Instagram. But every other single platform, maybe they manipulated Instagram and Instagram and TikTok maybe, but every other platform, nothing's happening. So that looks suspicious. Yeah. So our users can detect that way. And I don't think anyone would think about manipulating Wikipedia page views. Nobody thinks about that. So if suddenly there's a big uptick, but nobody's looking up this artist on Wikipedia, that means nobody's interested. So that's a fake. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. That was really interesting. Anybody else have any other questions now that we've been inspired?
Thank you for speaking. I want to ask, Mark is not available in Korea now. You know that?
What is
Mark is not
Soy,
available
is
in
Marky
Korea.
available in
네,
Korea
네, 네.
right now?
Oh, that feature.
I don't think it's available yet, but we are working to make sure that all of our products are slowly unlocking all around the world.
Oh, I'm curious, when is available in Korea? Maybe next year or? You got
Probably
plan?
hard
I
for
can-
Soy to answer
yeah.
that because there's so many other factors. But maybe Soy, you can share some of the products that are available in
Of
Korea
course.
that you can.
Sure,
use?
I can definitely bring that question back to our team. I would say that genuinely everyone at Spotify is so dedicated to ensuring that our products that we build, once we've tested them and we know that they work, that they are becoming available everywhere. It's super important to us. But the products that I know for sure are available in Korea today are all of those profile products I mentioned earlier, as well as the expression tools or like Canvas that I mentioned. And then also something that I didn't say yet, but for Spotify, no one can buy a playlist placement. That does not exist. And we make sure that every single artist in the world has equal access to the playlist pitch tool within Spotify for Artists, which is free. And that is the only way to make sure that an editor somewhere listens to your song. So it's a really democratic process, and we want to make sure that everyone around the world, again, has the ability to pitch their song to our team, share their story, make sure that the metadata is clean, it's accurate, let us know what's the right genre for it, and tell us why that song matters to you. And our editors around the world are tirelessly reading that information, listening to new music every day, and trying to find the best place for that song to be found.
Kudos to Spotify.
Thank you.
Amazing.
Did you have a follow-up question? I think a lot of that stuff has to go with like licensing and bigger conversations, especially when there is money transactions being exchanged. But Soy, to your point, all of the free tools and products are available, and I'm really glad that you mentioned that because we have so many people asking about paying to be on playlists. So I'm really happy, Soy, that you said Spotify does not allow people to pay to be on playlists. And from my understanding, when they find out that you have paid to be on a third-party playlist, they do not like it. Which is fair, right? It's breaking the rules in a way, right? Yes. We have actually run out of time for this panel, so thank you all three of you for your time, for your insights, for your knowledge. Everybody, if you would like a deeper dive into understanding your data, we do have a workshop in about, I think, 20 minutes or so, where we will have representatives in a different format, not so much as a conversation, but actually one by one, taking you through exactly where to find your data, how to find it, how to use it, from a chart metrics perspective, from a label perspective. So please come back and join us after a short break. Thank you.